Have you ever looked at your life and realized, you're in a way better spot than you used to be in, but somehow you feel still stuck? You survived things that once destroyed you. You grew, your habits changed. Maybe your life even looks better from the outside, but internally it still feels like you're not moving. You know, I can talk immensely into detail about my personal life and how this aligns with this topic. When I was back home, I was going to county college. I wasn't doing shit. I was working bullshit minimum wage jobs. I wasn't doing anything in my life, and I felt like I was so behind. And since I had all these vices, I was smoking pot every day. I was vaping. I was drinking. I wasn't doing anything productive. And since I moved out here, it feels like, yes, I've had the feeling where, yes, I've took an extra step in my life that's going to lead me to success in the future. But it doesn't feel like that at times. Like I portray that, and I like, from the outside I can see that, but internally it feels like I'm still at these small stepping stones when I should be, at these I should be so much farther than I am currently. And there are a lot of, like, reasons to that, to why I feel behind still. But, in reality, like, where I once was mentally, physically, externally, internally, where I once was, I'm nowhere near that person that I was. The version of you that had to survive. You're just trying to, get through the day, heal, escape toxic situations, stop hurting, figure yourself out. And during that phase, progress feels obvious. Every small improvement matters. Life has direction because pain gives direction. When your life is falling apart, progress is easy to recognize because anything better feels huge. And then once you get past that certain phase, you're in this middle stage, this in-between phase. And the in-between phase isn't who you used to be, and not yet who you want to become. You're healthier, you're smarter, you're more aware, but progress feels invisible. Why is that? Because your standards changed. You think of yourself in a higher way now. So if you don't live up to that, you think you failed. You failed that day. Your problems become internal instead of external. You stopped surviving, and now you actually have to build this life. A lot of people think peace will automatically feel fulfilling, but sometimes peace just feels quiet. Chaos gives adrenaline, and healing feels slower and less dramatic. Then you get to this point where you kind of compare yourself to this imaginary finish line. Once wanted freedom, and now you want status. You once wanted peace, and now you want perfection. You once wanted friends, and now you want this deeper meaning to friendship. You can be 10 times better than the old you and still feel incomplete because your mind already adjusted to this new normal. If you really think about it, like, if you can agree with this video and this topic, you gotta look back at your younger self. Like, you were this young kid who had all these aspirations and dreams of life, and then you went down these wrong paths. And now you're at this point in your life where you've kicked these vices, you've done better for yourself. So you have to look at where you were and what you are now. Not the fact that you barely notice the changes, but you have to realize the steps you've made in your life. And that will hit you hard emotionally and make you realize the progress you've made if you think of it that way. Progress isn't always meant to feel exciting. Real growth often feels boring, because stability isn't dramatic, discipline isn't emotional, and healing is repetitive. Movies make transformations look cinematic. Real life transformations usually look less consistent. Real life transformations usually just look like consistency. You don't always feel growth while it's happening. Sometimes you notice it months later. You know, maybe this phase of your life isn't about becoming someone completely new. Maybe it's about learning how to live without constantly needing chaos to feel alive. And maybe the fact that your problems are quieter now is proof that you actually did grow. You don't have to feel finished to recognize that you've come so far in life. You could feel like you're in this in between phase in your life, but you could feel that you've done so much to better yourself, but you can't just sit around and keep on and be acceptable with the progress you've made, because that's how you go back to what you once were. You have to keep on like doing things and keep on doing the things that you're currently doing that are making you progress so much in your life. With that being said, I will talk to you guys later, and I'm gonna make a couple more videos tonight, probably 1 or 2 more videos tonight. The night's still young here. It's only midnight. I've been making videos later on than this, so I'll probably make 1 or 2 more tonight and schedule them to post over the next few days. But I love everybody that watches these videos. You comment, like everything. I will reply. I'll do everything. I just love making these videos, and I love being able to talk about things that are relatable to some people in life. With that being said, have a great night, and I'll talk to you guys later.